Hey folks, ever since the War Within launched, I've been refining my 70 to 80 route as I level up all of my alts, and I'm now confident that I've developed the fastest leveling route out there. A few weeks ago, I managed to level a Devastation Evoker from 70 to 80 in only 1 hour and 38 minutes, and I believe that I can take this time even lower with additional runs. In this video, I'll walk you through all of the steps that I've been taking to level my alts from 70 to 80 in the shortest time possible. When you first log into the game on a level 70 character, you should receive a quest fittingly named The War Within. This quest provides you with a teleportation scroll that goes directly into your bags, and right-clicking it will cause you to be teleported to the introduction questline within Silithus. For the purposes of this guide, I'm going to assume that you've already reached level 80 on your first character and fully completed the War Within campaign in order to unlock Adventure Mode. If you're still working on your first character, then I'd recommend checking out my other 70 to 80 leveling guide, which is specifically dedicated to completing the campaign. On that note, I'd recommend skipping the Dalaran section of the campaign by speaking to Thrall or Jaina and selecting the dialogue option "I have heard this tale before." You'll then be teleported into the center of Dornigal, and you should find yourself standing close to Bran Bronzebeard. By talking to Bran, you can pick up the quest Adventuring in Khazalgar, which will tell you to interact with a nearby scouting map. This map allows you to pick up intro quests for the 4 different Khazalgar zones, and I'd recommend grabbing all of them just in case you need it later. Now that you've entered Khazalgar, we need to take a moment to discuss Adventure Mode and how it affects the leveling process. By definition, this system allows you to level with any activity of your choosing, but not all activities are equivalent in their leveling efficiency. Every time I make one of these guides, I'll receive messages from people telling me that I forgot to include some activity in my route. 99% of the time, whatever they're referring to is something that I had already tested and found to be inefficient, so I don't bother mentioning it in my guide. I don't want to waste too much time discussing why various leveling methods aren't as good as you think they are, but I will quickly show a portion of my written guide on screen where I went into a bit more detail on this subject. If you have yet to check out the written versions of my guides, you can access all of them completely for free on my website, and I've included a link to that in the description below. It's also worth mentioning that you'll gain an account-wide 5% experience bonus every time you level a new character up to 80, and this buff caps out at 5 characters for a total of 25% bonus experience. Obviously, this means that the more characters you level up, the faster the entire 70 to 80 process will become, and you'll be able to slowly trim out sections of this guide with each additional character. As such, I've actually included more activities within this guide than you'll normally need to reach level 80, since I want to make sure it accommodates players with no experience modifiers, as well as people who don't want to waste gold on leveling their professions. With all of that out of the way, we can finally dive into the first major section of my route, which involves Isle of Dorn questing. You'll want to start by following the campaign as you normally would, but since you skipped the Dalaran intro, you'll first need to fly west and reach the Dalaran crash site. From here, you can continue the campaign by grabbing the quests Slay the Saboteurs from Jaina and Urgent Recovery from Thrall. As you progress through the Isle of Dorn campaign, remember to set your Hearthstone to Dornigal if you haven't done so already, as this will save you a bit of travel time later on. Things will start to get interesting once you finish the campaign quests within Dornigal and are directed to head south towards Freywald Village. Before doing this, you should take a short detour southeast to a subzone called Crossroad Plaza. Run around this area and pick up any quests that you see, including the ones given by the wanted posters. You won't actually be completing every single quest here, but it's easier to grab all of them now and just abandon the ones you don't need later on. The 2 side quests that you'll want to complete immediately are called the Earth Wound and Wanted the Burrow Breaker. Both of these quests require you to kill a single mob, and both mobs are located fairly close by. You'll want to complete the Earth Wound first, and upon killing the mob, you should immediately turn in the quest. The Burrow Breaker should be killed as you travel south towards Freywald Village, but you won't actually hand in this quest until later. The turn-in point is within Dornigal, so you'll just complete it the next time you return to the city. Shortly after arriving in Freywald Village, you'll be directed to speak with Bran Bronzebeard and complete the Earthcrawl Mines Delve. One of the quests that you picked up back in Crossroad Plaza is named Delver's Call Earthcrawl Mines, and this will give you a large chunk of additional experience just for completing the delve. Normally, you're supposed to be able to pick up these Delver's Call quests within the delve itself, but this is currently bugged for the campaign version of Earthcrawl Mines. Thankfully, you'll still receive full credit for completing the quest, and doing the delve as part of the campaign will also guarantee that you receive the Kidnapped Earthen storyline. This is the fastest potential story that you can encounter for Earthcrawl Mines, so this entire segment of the campaign is really efficient. I'm sure you have many additional questions related to optimizing this delve, such as what tier you should select and what loadout you should pick for Bran. Worry not, because delves play a large role throughout my leveling route, so I'll be answering all of these questions and more later on. Although the route has been fairly linear up until this point, you'll now be presented with multiple options. You'll still want to grab the next 2 quests in the campaign, but you should also run around Freywald Village and grab every possible side quest. Most of these will be discussed later on, but the quest Prairie Fever should be completed immediately, as it provides you with 2 additional follow-up quests that you can finish alongside the campaign. Upon completing this side quest chain in all campaign quests up until the Proscenium, you'll want to stop following along with the Isle of Dorn campaign, as things slow down from this point on. You'll now have complete freedom to tackle the remaining side quest hubs in this zone with any order of your choosing. That being said, I'll still provide you with a recommended path for the purposes of this guide. The quest Weapons and Warriors will start within Freywald Village, but it'll eventually direct you towards a subzone in the east called the Glimmering Shore. This area contains a bonus objective that isn't visible until you begin the questline, making this hub extremely efficient for leveling. Once you're finished with all the quests in this area, fly north and complete the chain in the Bossgroot Basin subzone. These quests are located just outside of Fungal Folly, another delve, and you may want to take a detour and run the delve at this time. Again, we'll talk more about delves in the next section of this video. Next, fly to the west and turn in the quest All or Nothing. You'll want to pick up all of the other side quests in the zone, the Opal Crag, and you should complete all of them immediately. Upon finishing everything here, you'll be directed to a hub in the east called Golgrin's Reach. Fly there and complete all of the remaining quests in this area, as well as the nearby bonus objective. The questline will technically continue beyond this subzone, but you shouldn't follow it past this point. Before doing anything else, make sure you swing by Crossroad Plaza once again to hand in your completed Delver's Call quests. You can then fly a bit further to the north until you reach a subzone named Fallside Outpost. Start the quest chain here with Before I Depart, and complete every quest up until One More Tradition. It's worth noting that the Delve Kriegval's Rest is located nearby, and you may be tempted to complete it at this point. However, Kriegval's Rest is generally thought to be one of the less efficient delves, so in most cases I would just advise skipping it. Further to the north, you'll encounter a subzone called Rambleshire, and this area has a ton of efficient quests for you to complete. You should finish every single quest of this hub except for the very last one named Thunderhead Butt, as it contains a ton of roleplay that makes it inefficient. There are still a few other side quest chains within Isle of Dorn that aren't terrible, but the ones I've discussed in this video are all extremely efficient and should be prioritized. Once you complete all of the recommended side quests, it's generally a better idea to begin running delves instead of staying in Isle of Dorn. Delve leveling has been a divisive subject since the launch of The War Within, as they were initially extremely inefficient and not worth completing at any point. However, Blizzard has since massively buffed the experience rewarded by the Delver's Call quests, and this has single-handedly turned delves into one of the best methods of leveling. As previously mentioned, each Delver's Call quest can be picked up at the start of its associated delve, and it only requires you to get completion credit for said delve. Each of these quests rewards you with a massive chunk of experience that is roughly equivalent to completing an entire dungeon. This is notable because most low-level delves are extremely fast and easy to complete, making it very efficient to do each of them a single time in order to earn the experience from the Delver's Call quest. In case it wasn't already obvious, this means that you should never just spam the same delves if you're trying to level quickly. The experience that you'll earn from mob kills, while not terrible, isn't nearly enough to justify the time spent. You'll only want to complete a delve while leveling if you have yet to finish its associated Delver's Call quest. Also, while the tier in which you complete each delve doesn't make a massive difference, I've generally found that running on tier 2 will give you the best results. The highest you can go while leveling is tier 3, and increasing the tier will buff the mob's health and damage, but also increase the amount of experience that they reward. However, tier 2 provides you 10% additional mob kill experience when compared to tier 1, whereas tier 3 only provides you with a 15% bonus overall. Again, the differences here are very trivial, but a jump from 0 to 10% is obviously far more significant than a jump from 10 to 15%. Ultimately, this isn't an exact science, as creating a perfect way to measure the difference in completion time versus mob kill XP is nearly impossible. I just did many test runs on every single tier, and running it on tier 2 felt more efficient, so that's what I'm recommending. I'm sure many of you are also curious about how large of an impact Bran will have on your leveling time, and simply put, Bran is nearly worthless at his current tuning. Bran's scaling at lower levels is so abysmal that he'll usually contribute next to 0 damage in a delve. Even when he reaches his maximum level, 60, Bran will barely have an impact on the overall delve completion time. I recently got my Bran up to max level and made a video showcasing just how worthless he is in a variety of different scenarios. If that video sounds interesting to you, I've included a link to it in the description below. Now, as for curios, you should ideally have all of them at epic quality, as this does increase their effectiveness for your low-level characters. If you haven't gotten all of your epic curios yet, just make sure to run tier 8 bountiful delves on your main whenever possible, as you should receive all of them before long. For your combat curio, the only viable choice is Porcelain Arrowhead Idol, as this boosts your damage as well as Brand's. The uptime on it isn't super high, but you'll get more value out of this than any of the other options. However, you have a bit more flexibility with utility curios, as I would recommend either Streamlined Relic or Amorphous Relic. Streamlined Relic will give you a bit more movement speed while out of combat, while Amorphous Relic generally provides you with a larger damage bonus. Either option is perfectly fine though, and this will come down to personal preference. Also, even though Brand's damage contribution is extremely low, you should usually set his role to DPS, as this will give him a higher uptime on the Arrowhead Idol debuff. That being said, if you do find yourself struggling with survivability, you could always switch Brand's role to healer. With all of that being said, most Brand optimizations won't make a huge difference in leveling efficiency, as the most important factor to consider when running delves is which story variant is currently active. A delve's active story is randomly selected every single day during the daily reset, and some can be completed extremely quickly, while others are very slow. Each delve has 3 different variants, except for Underkeep, which has 4, and this means that there are 37 different delve variations in total. Now, obviously, I would need to be insane in order to thoroughly test all 37 variations just for the purposes of this guide. But luckily for you guys, I don't value my sanity, so that's exactly what I did. If you want an excruciatingly detailed breakdown on which delves are worth completing for leveling, I've posted an hour-long tier list video on my second channel, which you can find linked in the description below. Of course, I don't expect that everyone will want to spend all this time watching the video, so I'll provide you with a few important takeaways in this guide. As previously mentioned, Earthcrawl Mines should always be done as part of the campaign, since that guarantees you'll receive the best variant. A few delves such as Waterworks, Dreadpit, Skittering Breach, and Takrathon Abyss are worth completing regardless of their active variant, as all 3 story options are very fast. Fungal Folly should usually only be run if the Lost Miner story is active, since the other 2 are very slow. Similarly, you should avoid running Sinkhole unless the Rain's Gambit storyline is active. While none of the Spiral Weave variants are bad per se, none of them are extremely efficient, so you should only run this delve after you've completed all of the other ones that I've already discussed. Finally, the remaining 4 delves, Kriegval's Rest, Mycomancer Cavern, Nightfall Sanctum, and Underkeep are all really inefficient and should generally be avoided. There are some very niche cases where it could be worth including these 4 delves in your leveling run, but it would take me way too long to properly explain that, so you'll need to watch the full tier list video if you want that information. Obviously, in a perfect world, you would have access to the best version of every single delve on the same day, but in practice, this is unrealistic. While leveling your character, you'll simply need to poke your head into each delve in order to see which story variant is active, and then you can decide on whether or not that delve is worth running. I usually try to do my speedruns on days where the majority of delves have ideal variants, but this may not end up being the case whenever you decide to level your characters. Ideally, you should have reached at least level 75 after finishing everything in Isle of Dorn, and you may even be as high as level 78, which is where I was in my recent Devastation Evoker run. In either case, you could easily reach level 80 from this point just by running every delve a single time and turning in the Delver's Call quests. However, if you're still not level 80 after finishing all of the good delves, you may prefer to do additional side quests instead of running the remaining delves with a crappy story variant. At this point, you probably won't need too much more experience in order to reach level 80, but there's a lot of variance due to the Warband experience buff, so I'll provide you with multiple options just in case. If you've just barely reached level 78, or if you're somehow still at a lower level, you should head to Hollowfall and begin the campaign. As you progress through the campaign, you should grab every single side quest that you come across, but you'll only want to complete them when they're already close to a campaign objective. Generally speaking, Hollowfall is the second most efficient zone for leveling in the War Within, falling only slightly behind Isle of Dorn. The key difference is that a lot of Hollowfall's efficiency is backloaded, as Merildar specifically has a ton of side quests that can be efficiently completed alongside the campaign. Unfortunately, you won't actually get there until the very end of the Hollowfall campaign, which means it's difficult to justify leveling in this zone if you're already super close to level 80. Another great option is the very start of the Ringing Deeps campaign, and I would recommend this if you're much closer to level 79. The campaign in the zone is the exact opposite of Hollowfall. All of the best quests are front-loaded, so even if things slow down later on, you should have ideally reached level 80 by that point. For the most part, you'll just want to blindly follow the campaign within the Ringing Deeps, but there are 2 notable side quests within Gundergaz that you should complete. These quests are named On Cold Dark Wings and Discarded and Broken. The latter quest will also provide you with a few follow-ups that you can complete before progressing further into the campaign. Lastly, I mentioned earlier that all of the remaining Isle of Dorn questlines are still solid, but they aren't quite worth doing before you begin running delves. If you find yourself extremely close to reaching level 80 but you don't have any efficient delves left to complete, it may be worth finishing one of these extra Isle of Dorn side quest hubs instead. Now, with all of that being said, there is one final leveling method that I've opted to discuss at the very end of this guide, and that is crafting experience. Back in Dragonflight, Blizzard introduced the ability to gain leveling experience while crafting items for your profession, and this is undoubtedly the most efficient source of experience in the entire game, as you can gain roughly 2 free levels in under 10 minutes. However, this leveling method also requires you to spend a decent amount of gold on materials, so it may not appeal to newer players or people who are particularly stingy with their spending. Because of this, I wanted to make sure that I only discuss profession leveling at the very end of this guide, since I want to make it perfectly clear that this is not mandatory. Obviously, this will be a fantastic option purely in terms of time efficiency, and I usually start all my speedruns by doing profession crafting before I even touch Isle of Dorn. If you would prefer to save your gold, that's totally fine, and you can ignore this section of the guide and run extra delves or side quests instead. However, for anyone interested in actually trying out profession leveling, I'll provide you with some additional information on how this mechanic works. The experience that you earn from this system is tied to first crafts, which, as the name implies, is a bonus that you gain the first time that you craft each recipe. There's a small indicator on the crafting window which tells you if you'll get a first craft bonus, and you're also able to sort your recipes to only show the ones that you haven't crafted. In total, you're able to earn experience from 30 different War Within first crafts, but a lot of this experience is also front-loaded. The final 10 first craft bonuses that you gain will steadily decrease in experience value, with the 30th bonus being worth very little. For this reason, you may prefer to only get 20 to 25 of your first crafts if you don't feel it's worth spending gold on the last few. After 30 first craft bonuses, any additional ones that you complete will no longer reward any experience. The most important thing to note about crafting experience is that it is affected by many experience modifiers, such as the 25% Warband bonus and the Darkman Fair buff. This also means that if you were to complete your first crafts in a specific zone that applies a blanket experience bonus, you could theoretically benefit from that modifier as well. On that note, there's a world event in Dragonflight zones called Dream Surges, and this will be hosted in a different Dragon Isle zone every single week. While you're within the active Dream Surge zone, you're able to gain buffs that provide your character with up to 55% additional experience from all sources, and this does stack with all other standard XP increases. Keep in mind that these buffs only persist while you're standing within the Dream Surge zone, so you would need to be able to complete all of your first crafts without leaving whichever Dragonflight zone happens to be empowered. Thankfully, War Within Enchanting is perfectly designed to benefit from these bonuses, as you can craft most items anywhere in the world, and you don't need to speak to your trainer to learn the vast majority of recipes. When done perfectly, this method can grant you a colossal amount of experience, as I was already level 73.5 before the 10-minute mark of my speedrun. Since the exact steps required to complete the strategy are a bit complicated, I won't bore you with the details in this video. However, I've included a detailed step-by-step breakdown in the written version of this guide, as well as a complete shopping list for all of the materials that you would need to purchase. Well, that covers everything that you would need to know in order to efficiently hit level 80, I do want to quickly touch upon how this route may change in the future. The expansion has only been out for roughly 2 months at the time of recording, and although I have thoroughly tested this route with a ton of different characters, it's entirely possible that I may have missed something. Additionally, Blizzard tends to add new world events in the middle of an expansion, which greatly influences the time it takes to level. A great example of this would be the Dream Surge events added in Dragonflight, which we're still benefiting from to this day in the following expansion. As the War Within progresses, I'll do my best to test all of this new content and update my 70 to 80 guide accordingly, but for now, I'm confident that the route in this video is the fastest way to reach level 80. If you found this video helpful, I'd greatly appreciate it if you could toss it a like, as that'll help other people find it as well.